Cool. So that is our announcements. Oh, geez. Again, the music's always running. Ah, I remembered mostly this time. The overlay helps. Sorry about that, chat. Cool. So, Stack Overflow development. This is a talk that I've wanted to do for probably like 2 or 3 years. In the course of my career, both doing this meetup, but also being an engineer in a team full of people, I've come across a lot of code that I'm just like, what? Huh? What is this? And then you ask the person, and they're like, oh, I found it on Stack Overflow, and I just put it in there. So, well, what does it do? I don't know. Just put it in. And that works. You know, I'd be lying if I said I'd never done it. I've done that as well. But it can get you into a whole mess of trouble. So we're hopefully not going to build an app tonight. I'm hoping... so basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to build an app strictly by Googling things without knowing their proper term. So normally I would Google, how do I set the delegate on a table view? Those are all words that a beginner would not know. So I'm going to search for things like make a list. And if we get an error, I'll just search the error. Yeah, and you can see me this week. I did a stream on Sunday making this brand new overlay. And then the other night, Zev came and gave some good feedback and cleaned it up a little bit. So now you got Matt Cam and Zev Cam with our Twitter links below us and the Twitter link for the meetup over there and our GitHub, which I will put the code on and a blurb about it. Okay. So the app that I think we're going to try and build today is going to be something that we've kind of built before, but with some extra features that I wouldn't necessarily know how to make just off the top of my head. We're going to keep using our favorite Reddit API because it's open and RA is just a wonderful thing to stare at these days. But we're going to put a search box and maybe a search history in like a little drawer like you'd find on Apple Maps, where you can sort of drag it up and let it sit at 1/3 almost full screen and then like hiding down at the bottom. And behind that we'll do either a table or a collection view with a bunch of pretty pictures of cute things from the internet. And like I said, I'm expecting this to go just absolutely terribly. In fact, if it does not go poorly, the point that I'm trying to make, that building stuff just by Stack Overflow is bad, is going to be lost. So let's go. I'm going to call this SODD. We'll have a storyboard because I'd probably guess that more like Stack Overflow or Googleable things will not be SwiftUI just yet. Although
Google how to make an app.
Yeah, that might be a good start. Where do we put things? I'll put it on my desktop. Okay. So a question I have for you, Zev, and for chat is, normally when I Google something on stream or we Google something during one of our meetups, I have a little counter that I tick up to be like, hey, look at me. I had to Google something because I don't know everything. Should I use that today?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know if you'll be able to keep up, like, remembering to hit it every single time, but
I'm pretty good.
I think it'd be interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll start out. What would be the first thing? What's the first thing someone Googles when they're trying to build an app?
We know we want to get stuff from Reddit.
Yeah.
So
put Reddit
either look up the Reddit
iOS
API
app.
or yeah, there you go.
I'd say looking up the Reddit API would be using too much knowledge.
But it looks like we're running into one of the first common problems right away. And like, you know, low key, this is actually going to be a tutorial on how to fine tune your keyword searches so you get good like Stack Overflow results. One of the problems I always run into is like I Google something like this and we've got answers here about the Reddit app, but not about the Reddit like on the back end or you know, you're talking about iOS development. And I've found that the magic word to use is SDK. If you search for something iOS, you'll get stuff from like user groups and, you know, how-to tutorials for users. But if you include iOS SDK, then you'll typically get how to code things.
Okay, so this is an interesting twist that I did not expect to take, but I kind of like where it's going, where I will just Google whatever, and you could be that senior engineer coming in and be like, why don't you try the word SDK?
Sure. So JoeCab15 in the chat says, first step in making an iOS app, suggest as a to Google.
I love it. So we're still getting...
Now we're finding Reddit telling us how to build iOS apps.
So the first...
a little meta.
The first non-Reddit link is a Medium article. Do we feel like Medium's close enough to Stack Overflow? I would say yes. I see you nodding.
It comes up pretty often. A lot of articles, for better or worse, are on Medium with their great new logo.
Okay, so a big part for this to work is I'm not actually going to read the posts. I'm not going to read the code. I'm just going to copy paste things. And of course this person made it so I cannot. All right, so this is saying in the app delegate.
Assuming you haven't hit your Medium cap for the month, right?
I rarely use Medium. That's not a flex or anything. I've been doing other things. Omri, thank you so much for the follow. Really appreciate it. So this is saying func application app UI application. Open URL. And if you hear some weird gnawing noise in the background, that's my puppy who decided now is a great time to play with his ball. UI application open URL options key. I really wish that I could copy and paste this.
You've got a missing default value. I don't know if it matters.
Thank you. I put that in the wrong spot. Yep. If... Ooh, they put paren around. OAuth callback. This is perfect, actually.
Fun one to untangle, yeah.
I love this. All right, so let's just double check. Return true. Cool.
The capitalization's wrong on OAuth Swift, but as we'll find out, it's not going to matter.
Yeah, absolutely does not. Cool. So that looks as close as I'm going to get it to copy it correctly.
Let's run it.
Yeah.
We've got a Reddit app now.
We've built Reddit. Okay. Do you think beginners would know to click on the stop sign?
I'm not so sure. I think eventually they figure it out. I mean, it's been long enough since I was first learning this stuff that I don't know if I don't think the errors even behaved like that when I was first learning. So I'm not exactly sure. As they say in the biz, let us know in the chat if you knew that you could click on, or how you learned that you can click on those, because I don't think it's obvious. You don't get a special cursor. Well, you kind of do. You don't get like a hand cursor or anything.
I'm gonna say that the stop signs are within not Googleable things.
Sure.
But this one, definitely not. So, bump my Google number. Sweet. Stack Overflow.
So one thing I see a lot, especially with beginners, is you find a Stack Overflow post and spend a long time reading the question. And so I don't know if you wanted to talk through that, or talk through how a perhaps more productive way to use Stack Overflow.
Go for it.
So I didn't even realize I did this until I was helping out some folks who were getting started and got frustrated that they spent a bunch of time reading the question, because I realized what I do is I Google it, I find a Stack Overflow post that looks promising, and I skip right to the first, like, highest upvoted or selected answer, because the question, like, yes, you may go back and find something useful in there, but odds are it's definitely wrong, because they posted it. That's why they posted it, because here's what they tried that they know is wrong. So you're not necessarily going to have that much benefit reading it. I usually scroll right to the top answer, and if there's not an answer, either I give up, or I dig into the comments and figure out, okay, why isn't there an answer? Is this actually my question? In this case, I think there are no answers. So then I would start poking into, wait, is this actually answering the question I was asking?
Yeah, and I would go so far as to say, like, me as a beginner, I would see, oh, they're doing something with Twitch. I'm not doing something with Twitch. And I would probably move on from this post.
Sure.
I'm just gonna... I got one of those fancy automated desks. I'm gonna raise it up just a tiny bit. There we go.
But they do say the very first line of their question is, I'm trying to use the AuthSwift library to get an authorization token. That's a learning point. Like, oh, there's a thing called libraries, and I didn't know that I was supposed to use one or not supposed to use one, or was using one or wasn't, or what's a library. That seems like a common point of contention.
That's fair. That's fair.
Point of confusion. As we start into this, I feel like there's a risk that it's going to come off that we sound like we're like making fun of people who don't know things.
Great.
Which couldn't be further from the truth.
Great call out.
We spend a lot of time working with beginners, like Learn Swift Boston, right? The whole point of this meetup is to help people who are just getting started. And we see a lot of common patterns where, as people are learning, they're falling into some of the same traps. And so we're hopefully trying to sort of preempt some of those and just kind of observe, like, here's some things you might want to look out for.
Yeah, and really, the lesson that I'm hoping that we convey over the course of this meetup is to, Stack Overflow isn't a bad place to go find help when you're banging your head against the wall, but also understand not every post that has the same words is going to help. So it's really important to read and understand the proposed solution so you can pick the one that actually best fits your problem. And we're already finding that. I'm actually, while you were talking, while you were talking about us not trying to make fun of people that use Stack Overflow and don't know as much as we do, I've come to realize that this is actually talking about deep linking into your app with Reddit. So this is completely off.
Yep.
Okay.
So, yeah, one of the dangers of jumping right to the answer is you've got to at least be able to skim the question enough to see if it's the same question you have, or even in the same realm.
Yeah.
And sometimes that can be really hard to tell, because if you don't know the words for things, if you don't know you know, what's an API? Whose API are we talking about? Who am I authenticating? Is it my app? Is it their app? It can be really hard to tell if their question is even in the same domain as yours.
And I, not even beginner me, like me just earlier this week, I always go for the related searches. If I'm not finding something in the results that seems like it's going to be helpful, the related searches is a good place to go. So Reddit API example sounds like a great thing. I'm going to go so far as to say that's a new Google. Also, if you're just joining us, welcome. Thank you for checking it out. We are doing something called Stack Overflow driven development, where we are going to try and build an app just by Googling things and copying, pasting it in. And at the end, if you stick around, we've got a ticket to give away for Mobile Optimized Conference. That is November 6th and 7th. Okay. Both beginner me and senior engineer me is looking at this and just going, "Blah." So probably the next thing that I would do is look for posts.
As in, you want to get a list of posts?
Exactly.
Sure.
And I'm not seeing that at all.
Hey, post.
Mm-hmm.
To someone who doesn't know about HTTP methods, it looks like maybe those are related to post. But I mean, the problem with this is it might also almost be too open-ended. Like, this industry overloads so many terms that we're gonna, if we really do kind of follow the rabbit trail, we're gonna very quickly end up in dangerous places.
Yes.
That are unrelated to stuff that we're working on.
Yes. Post proto buff rabbit hole. Okay. So for the sake of this session, when do we feel like it's an appropriate time to step in and be like, okay, here's what you should actually do?
I think now is a good time.
Okay. So I'm going to assume that beginner me has watched enough Learn Swift Boston meetups that I have figured out that I can go to reddit.com/r/.json and I can get a whole bunch of JSON bleh. Okay. So then the next thing I'd probably Google is get content from server.
This is reminding
Swift.
me a lot of the first app, iPhone app I wrote in school, where I was working with some people who were building a web backend, and I knew they were using MySQL. So I'm like, great, I'm gonna go find MySQL clients for iPhone, so that I can use my iPhone app to query stuff from MySQL. I had no idea that, like, you don't do that, and it, like, nobody says you don't do that. Probably I wasted a few hours like Googling for that until somebody told me, like, no, you know, you're gonna hit a web service. Oh, what's a web service? So like there's a lot of there.
Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna go ahead and just comment this out. I have no intention of deleting any code today unless it straight up doesn't compile. So when we post this onto our GitHub after, which link up in the very top right, or URL, can't click it, but it is in ! Links. You can see just like how much cruft gets built into something when you don't really take your time to keep your code base clean. Okay, let's run that. Yeah, Joe, it kind of works out well with Halloween and the costumes. This is definitely a very, very scary thing. But I also feel like it's a very important stepping stone in everyone's development career. Because like you start out with tutorials or books, and they have a very, very narrow curriculum that they're trying to teach you. And you might be able to put 2 and 2 together to say like, okay, in this book I saw here's how you hit a URL. If I change that URL, I'll probably hit my URL. But not everyone goes down that road, and some people just do what we're doing. And I know that because I've seen it, both from the meetup and just from like talking to candidates I've interviewed, talking to coworkers, people on my team. They're just like, oh yeah, just paste that in. I don't know what it does. I've done that, like I said at the start of this. So like, you know, we're not poo-pooing anyone for doing this. Oh my god, it actually worked. You know, this is definitely a serviceable way to make applications. It's just not a great way to do it.
It's kind of it's like a debt crisis where you're taking on a lot of technical debt up front, and then you're going to have to pay it off if something breaks.
Yeah, but how did this even work?
You know, getting a URL and printing it is fairly, like, everybody's UTF-8 now, so encoding wasn't going to be a problem, and, you know, unauthenticated endpoints, HTTP, man.
Yeah, that's fair.
Well, great. Now we want to turn this into an app.
Yeah.
I mean, turning JSON into an app is what we're all here for.
So, oh, I like this. Joe says, well, part of it is I'll get it working now, and once it does, I'll look over the code and figure out why that worked.
Totally.
Yeah, and depending on deadlines and how much time you have, that's absolutely an okay thing to do. But you could also just move that time a little bit more up front and read it before.
I often find that if I'm trying to get something to work, until it's working, until I have all the moving pieces in place, if it's something new I'm trying to learn, I don't, like, I'll try to learn it, I'll try to read through the code, and I just won't understand what I'm looking at because I don't have a framework to attach words to.
Yes.
And then once it's working, I can kind of trace through and go, okay, I know it's working, so I know this code is right, so, or at least functional. So let me see, you know, let me basically forward debug it. Like, there's not a problem. I'm just trying to figure out why is my code working rather than why is my code not.
Right. Ooh boy, howdy. This is great. Okay, so if you missed it, I quickly Googled Swift put content in list, and we got this most upvoted answer from StackOverflow, which is 1 vote. And of course it doesn't work.
And this is one of those cases where like it probably will pay to go read the question, because it looks like they're not providing a fully working solution. They're just giving the part of the code that needs to be different, which, you know, is a thing people do. I think Stack Overflow's terms of service probably encourage writing up like a, you know, a complete answer, because they know that people just look at the answers. But it's probably worth mentioning also the Stack Overflow terms of service are like not the most welcoming, especially to beginners. You hear stories of like people post questions and then some super duper upvoted user comes through and like deletes the any help would be appreciated, or the here's an answer, hope this helps. Like those little niceties, the pleasantries, they will come through and delete them because they're like, no, your answer must not be nice, it must be correct. They have just like,
I did not know
I can
that.
kind of see where they're coming from. Like, okay, if you're somebody who's used to writing documentation, you know, you want your documentation to be like cold and professional, and you're not having a conversation, you're just looking at docs. But like, these are people trying to help each other, and it would be super weird at a meetup to like walk, mingle around slapping people's wrists and saying stop being friendly.
Absolutely. Please don't do that ever. Okay, so reading the question, the only thing that experienced me would copy and paste is this, but even that would be wrong to do. But it gets us a little bit closer. They are literally doing add, so they're doing insertion into the table as opposed to
add list items.
Yeah,
that's subtle. List of dynamic items. So this would be for if you put yourself in a beginner's mindset. This is an issue of not knowing what things are called.
Yes.
So maybe what might be another like Google Foo tip is add tutorial to the end of whatever you've typed, which I used to do a lot more than I do now, because as I got better at reading documentation, I needed tutorials less. But tutorials are great for when you're at that point where you don't know what to Google, you don't know what the things are called, you kind of want to see how all the pieces fit together. A tutorial is the best format for that, whether it's written or video.
I definitely agree with that. We are running up against SwiftUI having something called list.
Yeah, we talked about this earlier. Matt was asking, should we, as our sort of pretend beginner, are we going to Google this as list or table? And I was saying, I don't think it's obvious that UI table view is a table, because you usually think of tables as like spreadsheets, grids, and so it's called table. It doesn't really feel like a table. So I thought that might be a stumbling point. But we could say, assume they've seen a tutorial and know it's called table view. That could help. Hey, somebody found Waldo.
Yeah, Joe guessed it. I am Waldo of Where's Waldo fame. It didn't work out well because of the headphones. I tried other headphones that I have, but they're kind of like noise canceling, and I didn't like the way that it sounded hearing my voice like deep inside of my head. So
also, if I look around your video really closely, will I see your green cane and your snorkel and your backpack?
No, but I did get this really nice tapestry that's like a forest scene, because I was embarrassed by the state of the room behind me and didn't want people to see it, which is mostly why I don't do video camera on stream. So came up with this solution while I was traveling. You would not have insulted me if I was just wearing a red striped shirt. This is definitely like maybe 15 minutes before the stream, Zev asked if I had a costume, and I was like, I've got something in the closet. And he said, yeah, I've got my Darth Maul head. I'm like, all right, I'll be Waldo. Let's do it. Okay.
Should we throw in table view?
So yeah, I was gonna say let's pretend I've fought this for a week and a meetup has come up and I said, hey, person at meetup, I'm just really trying to put something in the list. I'm like, oh, why don't you try going for a table? So now that we're bringing in the ability to use the real names of things, UI wise, do you think this would be better as a table or a collection view?
I don't know.
Let's do table view, because I don't feel like getting hung up in flow layouts today.
Yeah.
I'm not in the mood for a flow layout. Okay. We'll call that a new Google.
There's that first one is one that I think a lot of people would probably skip over, but I know you're looking for Stack Overflow, but the first one is an Apple guide.
Yes.
And that's another resource that I feel like the first time that I really felt like I leveled up myself as a developer was when I realized, like, oh, the documentation has stuff in it and you can look for it and find it and read it, and like people have spent hours and hours putting this stuff together. Yes, there are problems. Yes, there are whole websites devoted to how the docs are incomplete, but oh look, these are incomplete too. Navigator toggles, utilities toggle, that's not real anymore.
Nope.
But some of these Apple things are actually the right way to do things.
That's a great thing to bring up. I personally almost never go to Apple's documentation because the times that I've needed it, the things that I need aren't documented well, but the things that are there for beginners are. And I remember interviewing someone actually from our meetup for an intern position at my current company. And a very, very common interview question, not just at my company, but in general, is when you're stumped on a problem, how do you, like, what do you do to get past that? And she said, I go read Apple's documentation. And I was blown away by that because, like, it's not something I do. And I wouldn't think that a beginner, someone going for an intern position would do that. And I was just like, wow, that's great. And we ended up hiring her. I don't want to say based on just that answer, but like I was impressed by that answer. So yeah, I don't want to poo-poo Apple's documentation either. So given that, do we want to assume that over time I could read this and more or less get as far as it did?
Sure. So you wanna fast forward a bit?
I do.
Throw together a table view because you know how to do it.
Yeah.
I think that's reasonable. Let's assume that a tutorial was followed. This is a new format for us. We're seeing how well it works.
Trying something new for sure.
I feel like once we have some app in our app, it'll be a lot easier to find smaller things to Google.
What is this?
I believe that's the mini map in Xcode 12. I think it's Control-Command-Shift-M to show and hide. It's the equivalent of the code mini map.
Whoa! I haven't used a storyboard in so long.
I saw it once, and yeah, I think it's. I think that's what it is.
Okay, so
speaking of haven't used a storyboard.
Yeah, I'll remember. It's been a while. So
table view controller, prototype cell.
I haven't talked about it on stream, but I've gone into a managerial role, so I'm not doing the day-to-day as much, and so the meetup has been nice for me to have at least a little bit of coding once a month.
I had no idea you could drag that.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, I killed my camera.
Did you smack it after your head exploded?
No, just autofocus.
If you like put your hand a little bit forward, it focuses on your hand. Too far forward. You want it like, yeah.
Oh.
Where do they talk about cell height? Do they? I'm gonna assume they talk about cell height. So yeah, like Zev said, and this is a new format for one of our sessions, and so if you like it, if you don't like it, let us know. I think there is a valuable lesson in it, but I also don't know if it's worthy of an entire session. But as we said at the
Triangle.
top of,
they changed the ruler to a T-square.
Why? That's mean.
Yep.
It's been a ruler forever. Oop. And do they talk about constraints? Doesn't look like it. They did put in a label, so I will too. Yeah, they're not talking about auto layout. That's curious. What are you complaining about? Okay.
Auto layout.
Yep. So let's give that a run.
Babe is making baby noises. I gotta step away for a minute. I will return.
Sure. Okay. So we got it enough to put something on the screen, which is progress, but it's not showing my content. So let's see if later on they start talking about all of that.
I was bailed out at the last second.
Nice. Welcome back. Okay, so they talk about outlets. So let's assume that I follow the tutorial and I'll do an outlet. Uh-oh. I can't drag and drop like it said that I could.
I know why. Let's see how Google does.
From 2017. Select the view controller in storyboard and change the name of view controller and the name to the H or M file.
I don't have an H or M file.
From 2015. Why? Wow, still using H and M. All right.
Yeah. Well, so does our hypothetical beginner know what that means and know about what happened in 2014? Probably not.
Nope. So I'm going to go back into here and type table view. But then I would assume that they would see that pop up. Or do you think that they would put in the .m?
Maybe.
Let's put in the .m. Nope, it deletes it. Oh.
Oh, cool.
Xcode having your back.
So they would have made a mistake and then never realized because Xcode just fixed it. So cool, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. So let's run that and let's see if it works yet. Nope. Something blew up.
Do they know you can click the red thing?
You didn't know you could click that?
No, I did.
Oh. Yeah, I've got to go under the assumption they know how to click things.
Sure.
The image outlet from table view controller to the UI image view is invalid.
Outlets ... Can't see the rest of the error message. I wonder if Google knows or Stack Overflow knows how to the 2 to 3 different ways I can think of to make that message visible. So like Xcode error message cut off. Oh.
No, I'm gonna do. This is what I did all the time when I was a beginner.
You type in the whole error message as far as you can see it.
Yep, because when I started, you could not copy and paste from Xcode. And I didn't know how to get the long things, so I would type out as much as I could.
Now we're really seeing how good Google is.
Oh. It's pretty good. Create a table view subclass. Cell subclass and set its class properties. Okay, so we'll Google that. This is amazing to me. I'm having fun. I don't know if chat's enjoying this as much as I am, but I'm having a great time just to be like, oh, let's crawl the internet of error messages.
Now that we're into it enough, it's actually kind of working.
Yeah.
It really makes me want to write a bot or convince someone to write a bot to do this. There's that XKCD where it mentions stack sort, a sorting algorithm that searches Stack Overflow for sorting algorithms and then drops it into your code and you're done. And then somebody actually went and built it.
I like it. 7800, thank you very much for the follow. File new. File. And UI table view cell, call it table view cell, because no one yet has specified how to name anything. Okay. And then Select Touch class under iOS. Select table cell. All right. I'm going to assume that since we hooked up the table view controller, we can figure out how to do that with my cell.
I feel like I had to Google that 20 or 30 times before I remembered to do it on the first try.
Oh, absolutely.
But yes.
Absolutely.
We've solved it. All right.
Okay. Or no, he called it my custom cell.
Yeah, but what if you... They called it my custom cell, but you didn't.
I know. Cool. Yeah, let's run that. Still failing because we called it table view cell. We've also got to go back into our table view controller and delete these. So that
I'm actually surprised it let us make outlets from the cell to the table view controller.
Yeah, I was also kind of curious about that. Well, that's not hooking up.
You may not be dragging from the... Yep.
Ah, there we go.
Another one that I don't even know how I would Google that one.
Yeah, I'm not gonna play that game. I've definitely usually in January we do something called Beginner's Night, where I take people that have never seen a line of Swift in their life and I end the night with them building a small calculator. And every time that I've done it, I've seen someone try and click and drag and click and drag and click and drag and never gets it. Oh.
Ugh, your first day writing Swift and you're dealing with Objective-C selectors.
So let's start with that. I'm so happy that Stack Overflow is the first thing first. Or in these last few. As of Xcode 6 beta 2, Swift does not have a way to designate strong outlets. That's not true.
6 added in 6 beta 3.
Oh, they took it out. Oh, yeah. Okay. It's a bug.
Xcode 6, that's when Swift was added, so it's the early days.
Just remove weak. Okay.
This is where you, like, sometimes it'll push you in the right direction, but sometimes you get off on a trail of wrong answers that just keep getting wronger and wronger as you follow suggestions that are not the right suggestions. Oh, this one actually does.
This has the right answer. You're making an outlet.
Ours is called image, right? Not image view.
Yeah, but it's got to be close enough where image and image view are both.
Why did table view cell get an image property?
I don't know. While this is loading, can I just tell you I hate the new tab system in the latest Xcode?
Oh, iOS 14. Image view was deprecated in iOS 14. And image is not actually in the header. It must be in one of the new cell configuration things. Weird. It's like UI table view cell dot image view is like a mainstay of iOS. What do you hate? The new tabs?
Yeah. I absolutely hate them.
Yes. Yeah, I don't really know what to do with them. I'm just scared to turn them off because I feel like I might be missing something.
I've tried to turn them off, but I can't.
Oh, there's a thing under navigation preferences.
I've done that. They just kept coming.
Oh.
I hate it. Oh, we're still failing. We're still getting this. We're getting it from the storyboard. I don't know how to Google this as a beginner, but I know what the answer is.
Which view controller is unreachable?
Oh, no. The actual error, because this is the same error that we just searched. Isn't it? No. Okay, new error.
This is also a good thing to remember as like if the designers of Xcode are watching, like all those little things you throw in your message, like brackets 12, somebody's going to throw those in Google. Like if you are designing error messages, it's nice to interpolate in the values of the user's error message, because then they can, then it's talking to them. It's telling them what's wrong with their thing, not just in general what's wrong. But it also means that the string becomes harder to Google, because somebody else might have the same error message but with different names of things. And that's definitely like another skill you learn, is which parts of this error message are specific to me.
Okay,
so cool, they put a little warning on it now.
Yeah. So for the sake of moving things along, I'm going to say that you eventually talk to someone and figure out that got messed up.
Really drives home like how hard some of this stuff is to learn.
Oh, yeah.
On your own, in isolation.
I was lucky enough to have a friend who I went to school with be a coworker at the job that I learned iOS at, and I regularly went to his desk and was like, yo, why is my table not doing table things? So Bob, I know that you're a follower. If you're watching, man, thank you so much for putting up with me in the beginning. Are we still getting build errors? Why? Now I don't actually know why we're getting build errors. So I'm just gonna go give this a quick clean. Wow. Okay. Image outlet from table view controller to UI image view is invalid. I removed that.
Well, so that's interesting. That's the one that you removed it from the code.
I removed it,
but not from the storyboard. If you go to table view controller, and that was that thing I said, I'm surprised it let us connect those. It did, but then it said they were invalid.
Yes.
Outlets can't be connected.
Build succeeded. Finally. Still nothing in our table though. So let's go back to our tutorial. That was 5 Googles ago. We're already up at 12. Wow, I don't think I've ever had a 12 count on stream. I don't. I'm guessing.
Oh, loading data.
Yeah, I'm guessing that this would not load data in the way that we would.
They're making hard-coded models.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to switch tutorials, maybe assume the user has found a tutorial on, or I don't know about tutorial, but like loading data into a table from the network instead of loading data into a table from hard-coded things.
Ooh, Alamo Fire. Haven't seen that one in forever.
Thank you, 2015.
I mean, the original intent of this is I would just copy both things, but I wonder if we've done this enough that we've kind of driven the point home. So do we want to keep struggling our way through this app chat, or do we want to assume that I have figured out how to make a table at some point in my beginner's journey? Perhaps from
you're right.
a raywunderlich.com book through an affiliate link that I saw on a meetup in the exclamation point links in the chat. So I guess I could just build. I'm just gonna build the table. Yeah. still kind of want to keep driving this point home.
Well, I think a lot of the value that we're potentially providing here is maybe tips and tricks on when you don't know what to do. Like we've done a what not to do.
Yes.
So what about some more best practices of like, if you're stuck, if you're trying to solve a new problem, where should you go? How should you interpret the answers, both on a Google search result and a Stack Overflow result? Where should you look in documentation? How can you look up documentation inline, that kind of stuff that I think a lot of people don't know about when they're starting out.
Yeah, I'd dig on that. Okay, so we lost our view to load code, so let's go grab that. I'm going to assume a little bit more knowledge has been gained over the course of bashing your head against the wall with this project. So I'm going to Google JSON to Swift object. Go for so yeah, so on the topic of like where to go to find good answers, looking at this search results, Zev, what would you advise a beginner to do?
I definitely look for the Apple stuff. Stack Overflow does tend to jump out. I try to read the subheading, like the little snippet that Google has pulled out. Often you can tell right away if it's like, go down to the bottom where there's probably one that's not as relevant. These are pretty relevant. Well, like the one from 2016, something about NSJSON serialization. If I know I'm not looking for that, for example, like just to say that that gray text can be really useful because it shows you the part of the page that contains the words you searched for. So that can be really easy to just eliminate. Like, yeah, this one doesn't look like it's going to be useful. Boy, I haven't seen the second page of a subsequent page of a Google search in a long time.
I went to the sixth page to find something less relevant.
It's been a long time since I have gone to the second page even. So yeah, I'm usually looking, just browsing those summaries to see if it looks even remotely relevant.
I feel like a lot of people, not just beginners, go for recognizable names, and so that's why you end up with Stack Overflow a lot.
Sure.
So Swift by Sondel and Hacking with Swift are also two websites that I think a lot of people rely on for quick tutorials or new things. And so I personally would probably, of these first 6 results, I would go for Hacking with Swift before I went to anything else.
Sure. Also, another trick I picked up from someone at a meetup was looking at the date. And that can be a tricky sort of a double-edged sword with Swift because the language has been changing so quickly. Less so these days, but 2014 through 2017 are tumultuous years. And so I will always look at the dates and try and find something a little more recent. The flip side of that is that a lot of the older ones, sort of 2015-ish and before, are going to be Objective-C, and they will definitely be older and less up to date. But often, if somebody's already written about something in Objective-C, they're not going to bother to rewrite it for Swift because once you learn a little bit about Objective-C, it's not that hard to translate between them, especially with like autocomplete helping you. So it's this weird thing where I'm saying, like, on the one hand, always look for something new, like within the last year, because the stuff changes so fast. But on the other hand, look for something old enough that it will have been from before stuff started changing, because you're going to find some old wisdom that that still applies, and it's a skill to figure out which of those you need in a particular situation.
Yeah, and I remember saying that to so the first job that I learned Swift at was when Swift came out, and we would get new teammates that were people that were Objective-C developers, but they needed to get on the new tide of Swift. And back in the Objective-C days, you could just Google, and something that worked 5 years ago still worked, because Objective-C was pretty, at that point, like already 20 years old and stable. But Swift was changing almost week to week when it first came out. And so a big thing was looking at the dates and knowing, because something 6 months ago could be completely wrong and broken. So yeah, the dates are a great call out. So I'm gonna assume that you've either read or not really read this as a beginner, or even someone with as much experience as I have, but you figured out where to copy and paste things. I'm even gonna leave in the old variable names, because that is something that gets done a lot. Ooh. Oh, because he had a flat file named JSON string that he turned into data.
They were forcing up in data before.
Yeah, we'll force on wrap. No, but I copy paste this thing and we had an error. I'm just gonna assume that you eventually figure out that your thing is called data and his thing is called JSON data.
When it's a compile error, those are usually a lot quicker for people to figure out than if it does compile but some name is still mismatched.
The data couldn't be read because it isn't in the correct format.
This is another like beginner gotcha, because you've got two log messages. One of them is image block deal open clip click, and the other one is the data couldn't be read because it's in the correct format. One of those doesn't matter, because it's just somebody at Apple forgot to turn off logs in their release builds. And the other one is actually the problem, but it's not a useful error message because they don't give you anything. So that's just another beginner trap. You know, Xcode is going to tell you stuff that's not relevant sometimes.
So I know what the solution is, or what
this is a tricky one to debug if you don't know what the solution is, because codable errors are kind of inscrutable.
Yeah.
But there is a clue. They're using error.localized description. Oh, what are we printing at?
This is just, yeah, we're doing
localized description. Yeah. I feel like the localized description may be what's tripping us up.
Okay. Want me to just print error?
Yeah, except, you know, all the tutorials say print localized description, so that's not necessarily something you'd think to try, but that is actually giving us a useful error message. Whether Google thinks it's a useful error message is another story. Oh yeah, there's a great example of Stack Overflow being real friendly. Please learn to understand the decoding error messages. Like, okay, yes, that is correct. That's what we're saying too, but like, please learn to say it in a better way.
Right. And you had a real life anecdote about how awful Stack Overflow can be.
Besides what I was saying earlier about just like people deleting the hope this helps. I can't remember what we talked about offline and what we talked about online.
You were talking about at least one woman, maybe two women that you know personally that had some bad times on Stack Overflow.
Yes, and did I write that message to you? Because I'm actually forgetting the details now.
It was either in our Slack conversation.
It was a thread.
Yeah, it was a thread in the Slack.
Twitter thread.
Yeah.
Where was it? It was probably in useful links. Yes. So if you are we talking about Slack?
We can talk about Slack.
If you're in our Slack group, under useful links, I posted something on Wednesday, October 21st. But I guess I will post the thread.
I'll bring it up on screen.
Okay. I'll also just repost the message that I had posted in there, in here, which is basically that. Often, if you're mentoring people, people will say, "Oh, you've got a question? Just post on StackOverflow because I'm a straight white dude and I've had good luck." And that was my experience. An early goal for me when I was trying to kind of level up my development was to get a certain rep on StackOverflow by posting a lot and like adding questions and things. And that worked out okay for me. And it's not the case, I've learned more recently, for a lot of folks. And there's just a thread on Twitter of some examples of like it could be so much more welcoming, and it's got some stuff that they do that really just turns people off immediately, so that they never go back. They go, "Oh yeah, I don't post on Stack Overflow anymore because they're awful there."
Yeah.
Yep.
Our founding meetup, Learn Swift LA, actually did a session about finding and answering new questions on Stack Overflow, and I thought that was an interesting and good idea for a meetup until I started really looking at the content of some of these answers, and like I don't want to scroll down because I don't want to show off this person's name, but like this is not how you talk to anyone, even strangers on the internet. Like what they're trying to say, like you said when we first got to this, what they're trying to say is the same thing that we're trying to say, but they're very much nicer ways to be like, "Hey, the error message says what the problem is, and here, let me elaborate on it."
Yeah, this one makes it sound like you're an idiot for not understanding the error message. And there's another way to say it, which is like, once you learn the secret, the information you need is there. But it's not your fault for not understanding it. Codables error messages are very inscrutable and have lots of noise, and it's hard to see what you want.
Well, and especially if you're new to this, you don't know that. Like you and I know that because we've been fighting with Codable for years, but if you're building your first app and you see this mess of an error and you Google it and the first answer is, "Hey, dumbass, read better." Like, no thank you. Dre Kev, thank you so much for following. Appreciate it. But the error eventually, if you Google it enough, will let you know that our codable models aren't good. Is this song? No. Where's the last Reddit one that we did? Image markup?
Yeah. Where we never actually did any marking up of images. And barely even loaded images.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna go ahead and steal all of this, because the real error that they want to say is, "Hey, you gave us a codable object that does not match the response that we got back from the server." Which is, something to talk about also while I'm copying and pasting this. Apple, for as great as they are at building very user-friendly devices, are not really great at building user-friendly error messages and even sometimes documentation. And so you've got to kind of find your way through that. And if you are watching this and you're thinking about building your first app, don't be discouraged by having struggles with the stuff that, we're kind of joking about a little bit. These are definitely struggles that both of us went through. Oh my God, I'm still having problems.
And are still going through.
Yeah, and that's why I love the Google counter at the bottom of the screen. I use that in my regular streams. We use that on this meetup all the time to highlight that, you know, I don't know about you, Zev, but I've been doing this for like 7 or 8 years, and I still have to Google things every day.
Oh yeah, I mean, I have like, I cleaned up a bit, but before we started the meetup, I had 4 Safari windows open, and each one had maybe a dozen tabs of like, you know, the progression of like, you know, more and more specific queries for the same, how do I do this thing in iOS? Because that's like my whole day is tracking down what's the way to do a thing.
Yeah. There's a question in chat. What do I use to keep track of my Google use? So I have this thing called an Elgato Stream Deck. It's got a little button on it that when I tap the button, it runs a script that we wrote on one of my regular streams. If you're new to this stream, I do not this meetup on this Twitch stream used to be very regularly, and starting this Saturday is going to get back to being pretty regular. Stream counter. Quick little sidetrack. Basically on stream I wrote this quick little Swift script because Swift can be used for more than just building iOS apps. It can be used for building servers and scripts. Scripts are things that just run behind the scenes on your computer. And whenever I tap my Googled button on my little Elgato Stream Deck, I wrote an Apple script that wraps all of this, that will call this increment function, that goes out and opens a file that's saved in the project.
It's amazing. I had no idea you wrote this.
Yeah, dude. It saves in this text file. So it opens up the text file, sees if there is contents. If there's not, it sets it to 0. If there is contents, it increments it by 1, and then it writes it in my little write function. And then next to my Googled button is a reset that will bring it all back down to 0 and save it to the file. So at the start of every stream, I hit the reset button, and then over the course of a stream, I hit my Googled button.
It's pretty great.
Yeah, it was a fun one. The hard part was trying to get it to work with Stream Deck. So I had to write, like I said, an Apple script, which is a SCPT over it. And it was Apple script is incredibly easy. Let's see, open. Can I open this with Xcode? Nope.
Nope.
I don't want to run it. Yeah. So Apple script, I just said like run this script in shell. It's cool. Yeah, little diversion. I built that on stream. Super fun. A lot of Googling in that one, because I every time I've ever tried to write a script with Swift, I've failed miserably and end up going back to Bash. But for whatever reason, Bash would not work with the Stream Deck, and I had to figure out that it was Apple script. Don't know why it works.
Challenge mode is to write your increment script in Apple script.
No, thank you.
Yeah. All right. So we got an error message.
We have an error message.
This is also errors like this where it's kind of like it's hard to sink your teeth into the error. It's like it's so not working that it's not even clear what's not working. This is where having like this meetup community can be so valuable, because you can post a question and there's going to be somebody online at whatever hour you post it who's going to look at your error and go, they're going to pick out the one keyword that they know from experience is important and go, hey, what is your, tell me about your model. What is the root object like? And, ask the right probing questions that they can lead you to, where you need to get to.
And if you missed it, it's because I had previously an array of post when it's really just a single response. There we go. Finally. Cool. So now,
what do we Google next?
I think, at least for this portion, we're past Googling.
So you want to hook it up to the table?
I want to try and get it hooked up to the table. Oh no. We didn't have that in our model.
What?
The title.
Oh.
Oh, did you know that our AW has a Discord server? Chat, something that Zev and I have discussed offline is potentially switching from our Slack to a more open Discord server. Part of the reason being is Discord is a little bit more friendly with capabilities and cost. We have a free version of Slack, and we've kind of bumped up against what that allows us. So if you're open to the idea of joining a Discord, could you put a yes in chat? Or a Y? Did we do a custom key for this? Zev, thank you for putting your Y in there. So we're starting to see some Ys coming through. So for next month's meetup, I will have a Discord set up. And we will have that be a public link instead of our super private Slack.
Cool.
Now, why is a string not decodable?
This is another subtle, like Xcode is like really could be more helpful.
It's also not letting me copy paste.
Speaking of wasting time writing useless scripts, I wanna build a thing that is a native Mac app that runs on my Mac and detects when the camera is on or the microphone, and have it send a message to an Arduino outside my office that says on air. Recording studio, so that the family knows that I'm on air.
I like it.
You know, even just in a work chat. Do you want me to tell you what you're missing? You got it.
Yeah. I thought it was, but my eyes just did not see the coding keys.
Yep.
Okay, so we got our title in. My dog is crying to go out. Can you request control and pick up for a hot minute?
Sure.
Cool. Let me mouse for a quick second.
Mm-hmm. But babies can't read. Yeah, we'll have to work on that.
Cool. Be right back.
She's turning pages. She thinks she can read. She thinks reading is holding the flat thing and going like this, and a voice happens. She's a good bean. Okay. She's 5 months old. Let's see. We're hooking this up. So we possibly got the data model set, and so I want to store this somewhere and then load it up. We're kind of assuming that that we've figured that out. So let's go. What is the type of this? So here's another, like, my brain exploded when I found out you can do this. Swift relies on type inference a lot, or not relies on it, but lets you, leave off a lot of that pesky type information, which is nice a lot of the time. But like, I want to know what type to make the variable up here, and I don't know looking at this. But if I hold the option key and click, it will just tell me what it is. And then the other way to do that is if you have the right sidebar open and you go to the question mark thing, which I feel like a lot of people don't really know about. It will just give you that documentation for whatever thing you click on, except for self, because for some reason they just don't document keywords. But like, I can click on URL session and get the whole docs for URL session. There's shared, there's data task with URL, and you can just read it there. It just kind of saves you some time having to open the real doc viewer, but you can of course click open developer documentation, and I'm not going to do that right now because last time I did that on Matt's stream, it crashed Xcode because of a bug, and I don't know if he has the latest Xcode. So we will not do that. But I saw that the type here was a response, so I'm going to go ahead and make a variable. And let's see, it would need to have a default value, and I don't really. Well, okay, I'll make it an optional. I was thinking I could also pull the people out and store them as an empty array. I'll just make this an optional. It starts out as nil, and then I'll go, self.people, self.response equals people. And then down here, number of sections, there will be one section. And number of rows in that section will be response dot data. Thanks for tuning in. Primal Red dot children. Again, I don't know what the type of that is. I'm gonna. The one annoying thing is that it sometimes doesn't show if stuff isn't compiling. It can't figure out the type, but fortunately, the error message says so. Okay, that's an array of children dot count, and it's going to yell at me because value of optional type int must be unwrapped to value of type int. Yes, I know, because the response was optional, everything after it is optional. So I'm gonna just take a shortcut and coalesce that to 0. So if the response is empty, then we just won't show any rows. And then we'll get down to here. We probably need to tell the table view to reload data after populating. See if that works. Whoa. Huh. Cool. So this seems like, whoops. Yeah. Resizing thing strikes again. Seems like another good one to Google. Oh, there's a search with Google option right there. I can't hit Matt's button, so we'll have to remind him to hit it when he gets back. So I'm basically ignoring the question and going to the answer. Swift 3 and later use dispatch queue at main data async self.tableview.reload data. Looks like exactly what I might want. That is actually the right answer here, more or less. Ooh, unable to deQSL with reuse identifier. Hey, cool. Classic. Oh yeah, I can't triple click over screen share. This is a classic iOS learning, rite of passage. Here's one on the Apple developer forums, and used to be I would completely avoid the Apple developer forums. They were updated recently. I'm now mostly ignoring the Apple developer forums, but they have this new format, and they're maybe a little more active now. It's not the best. You have not properly defined the identifier in the nib file for the cell, or the name used in your function calls for table view are not the same. That's kind of what I'm looking for. Hey. Oh, you can't hear me. Hey.
Hello, I'm back.
So we're just at the point where we're finding out that our table view cell isn't registered. Must register a neighbor class with the identifier. I Googled, and the Google result wasn't spectacular.
Of course I wasn't. I almost forgot my hat. Can I have a mouse for a second?
Yeah, you can remove my control.
Sweet. Whew. It is raining out. Cool. So we're gonna register our cell.
forget if we can just do this in the storyboard or if we have to do it here.
I don't know either. I also don't know if you can register it this way if it's in a storyboard.
Yeah, I don't know.
Primal Red, thanks for watching. Have a good night. Nope, still hating this.
I'm guessing that the actual problem is that we're not dequeuing a cell. Or connect a prototype cell and a storyboard. Oh yeah, we are dequeuing a cell, but the wrong cell. That could have taken a while to figure out.
Mm-hmm. Okay, there we go.
I wired up the counts, so we just need to populate the cell.
Cool.
I opted to store the optional response. We could change it to an array of posts or whatever.
Yeah, we'll just stick with that because we're getting close to time. Uh-oh. Okay. Oh, yes. So there's a couple ways you can do this. What's your favorite way to cast a cell?
I mean, I would use a little library, so I can do let cell cell type equals my custom DQ method.
Mm-hmm.
But that gets into generics and stuff. I think I have baby needs. Hang on.
Sure. So for chat, dequeuing a reusable table cell gives us just a UI table view cell, but we want our specific table view cell, which is a terrible name, but I gave it a terrible name because we used to be making a point and now we're actually making an app. So to get it to be your cell, I'm going to use an exclamation mark. I would not suggest it normally, but for the sake of just getting this working,
I would suggest it normally. The libraries that I use usually do that because I feel like a mistake here is a programmer error that you should be catching at development time. You could make a case either way. Also, just to clarify, it is actually dequeuing your cell, but the way the dequeuing mechanism is set up from the old days, it can't express in the code that the cell it's dequeued is the right type. So even though it is the right type, you have to convince the language that it is. So
yes.
Swift is going to force you to either ask it if it's the right type or tell it that you know better than it that it is the right type. Oh, that's interesting. Why would a dequeued cell's label be nil? It should have deserialized from the storyboard by now. This is going to be an annoying one to Google for. Hell, it's an annoying one to debug in real life.
Yes.
There's so many layers to it because it's failing, because it's an implicitly unwrapped optional. But then why is it nil? Maybe we do need to set the reuse identifier in the storyboard.
My dog's not allowed in the bedroom, and twice today he's just like, oh, I'm gonna go check this out. I'm like, no, you're not.
I'm excited for the day that my daughter is as smart as your dog.
My favorite is that he knows when he's in trouble, and like you can see in his eyes, he's trying to decide whether or not what he's about to do is worth the yelling afterwards. Storyboard, register, cell, table cell. Use Your Loaf is another good one. Ooh, 2012.
Nice.
Oh.
Gradient toolbars.
Objective-C.
It's funny, like you say Objective-C, but when I see that, the first thing I think is the old APIs.
You're getting some Objective-C in here too.
That's a name I've not heard since.
So in about 10 minutes, we're going to be giving away a ticket to Mobile Optimize Con, which is a conference that's going to be the first week of November on the 6th and the 7th online, with a whole bunch of topics for both iOS and Android developers. It looks super interesting. It's got some good talks on like Swift UI and reactive programming. I'm trying to remember what all I saw on the website while I'm also looking for the answer to our problem. Class for Coder. Is that it? Nope. Let's try setting the reuse identifier in the storyboard. Nope. Oh, post is nil. Both are nil.
It's okay for post to be nil. I mean, it's weird.
Both are nil because the network request is not yet finished.
But I'm returning the count. One section with 0 items should be fine. If response is nil, then we shouldn't be getting here. So why are we getting here?
Yep.
Now the real fun starts.
Hey, what's up, Kombucha? Long time no see, bud. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, you don't say. It's in there, man.
Part where you throw the debugger out the window.
Let's cut the cell. The label's nil. Why is the label nil?
Well, the labels must be nil because Awake from Nib hasn't called yet.
Yeah.
Which raises the question, what?
Oh, I googled a thing and I never hit it.
This has got to be one of those, like, you and I never use storyboards anymore, so something is...
I mean, even when I do use a storyboard, I don't make my cells in the storyboard. I make them in nibs.
Do we have to register a nib rather than class?
But it's not in a nib, it's in the storyboard.
No, but well, that's another one of those beginner traps. Storyboards are nibs in terms of archive loading. To have the table cell loaded from a nib, you need to register Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. Because it's in another storyboard, so I don't know what what we're gonna pass in here. But oh wait, class for coder.
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
Previous Googling.
Previous Googling. Well, I don't love it. Let's try this one instead and just swap in the.
But what's the nib name? The cell?
Never mind. This is probably not gonna work.
Because to me, the nib would be main, storyboard main.
Yeah.
If you register the class, it wouldn't load the IB outlet. But why? Could not load nib in bundle. But why?
So then what do we need to register kombucha? What if we don't register anything? We let the storyboard do the work. I think that's what we're supposed to do.
And it didn't work before because we didn't have the reuse identifier in the storyboard.
Yep.
Hey.
That's not obvious.
Nope. Cool. Fluffy cows. I don't feel like we can do a whole image in 5 minutes. So let's use the next 5 minutes before our giveaway for a mobile optimized ticket. I guess, the lesson, if you're just tuning in, over the last hour and a half, we tried to build an app just by Googling things without really using the real names for things, to sort of simulate being a beginner and not really, having the years of experience that both Zev and I have, to sort of drive home the importance of, yes, you can Google things to try and get over a hump that you're stuck on, but you should kind of read and understand the stuff that you're putting in there. So to sort of, wow, my brain just stopped working on the words. Let's go, going back over the steps we went through. The very first thing we Googled was put Reddit posts in an app, or like in a list in an app or something like that. And the very first answer told us to put this open URL function on our app delegate. And if you're newer to iOS development, this function, there's something called universal links in iOS, which is referred to as deep linking in other platforms. Basically, you tap on a link that's somehow hooked up to your app, and this function gets called, and then you go do something in your app based on it. So this was not at all, in any way, shape, or form, the correct direction for us to go to. This function also gets called for other reasons, but I think that's what the intent of that post was. So then we did a little bit more Googling, and we were sort of changed the words and the technique that we were going through, and we got some networking code which worked, but then we're like, how do we get our stuff in a table? And we got some more stuff that just made zero sense, but it had the word table view in it, so we knew that we were getting closer. And at that point, we felt that we'd kind of driven the point home that, you can't just take things. You've got to read. You've got to do the tutorials. And it's kind of, for me, I don't know about you, Zev, but when I was first getting started, it was very frustrating. I picked up a book. I learned Objective-C from it. It was a really great book, but I was learning on the job. I was a server engineer. My boss came to me and said, hey, learn iOS because we're starting an iOS team and build iOS apps. Very different words that he used. But, I was saying, I have this ticket, I have this task that I need to get done, and I'm sitting here reading how to register table view cells and not understanding what any of these words mean. And so you go to Google because you have that pressure of I just need to build something. And it's very frustrating to do those tutorials, to read those books, and for it not to have your awesome idea for an app in those pages. And I think that's why a lot of people end up going to Stack Overflow, because that is real world people trying to solve real world problems, but those answers aren't always your answer.
I think with the books and with Stack Overflow, a common problem is, doing the mental abstraction work to bridge that gap between what you're reading and your particular problem. And I definitely remember running into that a lot with the first little like hobby app that I built and shipped to the App Store, because it was not in the tutorial books. It was an app to draw pictures by spinning your iPad, and nobody's written a tutorial on that. So, what do I Google? And I kind of remember a general feeling of like, none of this makes sense. Go and do a bunch of tutorials on other stuff, fiddle with other projects, come back to my project. Oh, I didn't realize I was learning this, but now the thing I was confused about makes more sense. I mean, I find I went back to some code from last year to update something and realized that I'd done a bunch of stuff in a way that I wouldn't do anymore, because I've learned a bunch in the last year that I don't remember learning. Like just immersing yourself in the world and doing tutorials that are unrelated, you're still going to pick stuff up, and then you come back to your same problem and suddenly it's not hard anymore.
Yeah, and I think that is a great thing to call out, is like doing these little things and trying to tie those pieces together really helps out. And I think that you have to do a certain amount of tutorials to be able to get to that. SB9, thank you so much for giving out a tier 1 community sub. That's super awesome of you. Thank you. Whoever got that, please use your emote. I made some emotes in chat. So we are giving away a ticket to Mobile Optimized Conference. There's a short description of it in chat, but it's a conference coming up November 6th to the 7th. It's online. It's got 2 tracks for iOS and Android, but there's also like a multi-track, so you can sort of mix and match things as far as I understand. We have a promo code for it, which is Swift10 Boston, that gets you 10% off. But if you are interested in getting a free ticket to this great conference, type the word Swift in chat right now, and MooBot will go ahead and do a random drawing for it. And so while you're typing Swift in chat, Zev, when, with your your drawing app, when did you sort of feel the confidence of like being able to go from books or tutorials to tying that together? Because that is something that's really niche, and you're not going to find in those beginner or maybe even advanced books.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting because I started out with a book in college. I was kind of self-teaching iOS on the side, and then it was enough to get me a job as like a designer who pretended to be an iOS developer. And at that job, I was surrounded by really good like Objective-C developers, and I was asking them tons of stuff and like, hey, how do I learn computers? How do I get better at this? And they taught me some stuff, and they recommended things. And at one point, I remember buying, it was either O'Reilly or I think it was Big Nerd Ranch, Objective-C maybe, or it was the iOS Developers Cookbook, one of those. It's like purple with a bridge on the cover, and
yeah.
And I got it, and then I like started reading it like that was going to be my evening reading, and I got like a chapter or 2 in, and I realized, oh, I'm not learning much from this book, because I've apparently picked up the stuff that I thought I needed to learn. So it was sort of a gradual process over my first maybe a few months to a year at this job of just kind of absorbing, and this similar to you, I was kind of learning on the job, right? I had sort of faked my way in, and then was kind of catching up and learning a lot of the fundamentals that I'd missed. But kind of getting to that point of realizing like, okay, the problems I'm having are not like, what are these things called, and what are the basic terms and basic principles. I have reached a point where I know how to find those things on my own by either asking good questions or Googling for the right things. And it was definitely a gradual process. And during that time, I was writing this app on the side, and I completely rewrote it twice. So I wrote it, and then I got to a point where I realized I learned enough that I realized what was wrong, and I completely threw it out and started again, and then did that one more time before I shipped it to the App Store. Then iOS 7 came out, so I completely redid the UI, and then Swift came out, so I completely rewrote it in Swift at some point.
So you and I must have gotten started around about the same time. which for the chat, Kombucha, thank you so much for the 5 gifted subs. That's incredibly generous of you. And John, thank you so much for the follow too. Also for chat, if you type Swift in chat, I'm going to do the drawing in just a moment, but if you want to enter, type Swift. If you've already entered, don't type it again. You only get 1 entry. But I remember when I started that transition from 6 to 7, like that was a heated debate amongst my team, where like one dev was like, well, we should do 6, and another was like, well, 7's about to come out, we should just target that. And I'm still trying to figure out what any of these words mean. And they come to me like, Matt, what's your opinion? Like, I don't know, man. Why are you asking me? Like, I don't know. What's the implication of not doing 6? Why don't we do 6? 6 sounds great. But, you know, I think your story of like having these sort of language milestones, having you rewrite it, but also like personal growth milestones, it echoes very well with me, where like I don't remember exactly what it was, but there was a time that just like things clicked and it was like, I got it. Like that, there was that aha moment, and I too went back and I started rewriting things, and like that'll happen for everyone along their journey as long as they stick with it long enough. Where, you know, it might be frustrating, you might be getting weird answers on Stack Overflow and not knowing why, but like eventually it will click, and eventually you can go and clean up your code. Cool. So thank you for sharing that story. That was super cool. I never knew that.
I might have accidentally entered the drawing, so
I don't believe you did.
Exclude me. Okay.
You have to write just the word Swift.
Okay, I mentioned Swift in something else.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna draw. So yeah, that's our meetup. SPL9, please do stick around. I'll give you a whisper. I think I can do
these words you're using.
It's someone's name in chat, and whisper is like a direct message in Twitch. Also, I was using a tool called Moobot, which is a fun little thing to do. Moobot is what does all the commands in chat for me. And also like subscriptions are that. And so like now you can see next to your name in chat, there's like a little Swift bird that I just added, and you have an emote. So if you do :learn S1 Swift, you can do a little Swift bird in chat. I made that while I was on vacation. Yeah. But yeah, I want to thank you so much, everyone in chat, for coming and hanging out with us on this terribly cold and rainy Thursday night in Boston. I hope you got something out of this. This is the first time that we've done this session, and I always imagine doing it in person and kind of like shouting out and asking for suggestions, but I think it went pretty well. I would love your feedback on this, either on the meetup, in the Discord that I'm going to set up for our next meetup, or, you know, just DM me. I'm also, like, my DMs are open on Twitter. Let me know what you thought of the session. I would love to know if this is something that we should do if we ever go back to doing this in person.
Should we tease the next meetup?
Yeah, the next meetup will be the third Thursday, which
November 19th, I believe.
Sounds about right. I don't know if we have a topic for it yet.
The topic in the list is testing. Now, we've been down this road before. We tried to do testing and ended up doing a meetup on Combine because we got massively sidetracked trying to test something in Combine, and it turned out that was a disaster. Maybe someday we'll come back to it and realize what we didn't know because we've learned enough, but today is not that day. So it might be about testing. Let us know in all the places Matt just mentioned if there's stuff you'd like to know about testing. But it might be about something else.
Yeah. So hope to see you next month for that. If you're doing something for Halloween, please be safe. And if you live in the United States, please, 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 on Tuesday, if you haven't already, vote in a very safe manner. I don't care who or how you vote, but please at least vote.
I do.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you all again. If if you didn't see in the about below, I'm going back to doing my regular streams. So starting this Saturday at 10 a.m., I'm going to dive into the wonderful world of building a server with Vapor, which is a Swift library for building servers. So I'm going to go back to streaming every Saturday and Sunday at 10 a.m. So you'll see a whole lot more of this weekend. Thank you all so much again for watching. Thank you all so much for chatting, and I hope to see you in the next one.